Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have Cumbria Woodlands joining us, and we have Jamie Chaplin-Bryce and Carrie Hedges. We are going to be talking about tackling the needs of different woodlands. Cumbria Woodlands have a range of expertise that they're going to share with us and a couple of case studies. And as always, in our SWOG webinars, we will be doing our question and answer session at the end. So without further ado, I'll pass over to you, Carrie. Take it away.
Hi. Hi everybody, I'm Carrie Hedges. As I said, I'm the training development lead for Cumbria Woodlands. I'm also a forestry consultant, and I specialise in sort of the upper fells or the uplands and the forest edges, edge habitats and ancient woodlands as well. And Jamie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Jamie Chaplin-Bryce. I do primarily ancient woodland restoration advice and work for Cumbria Woodlands. So that's funded through the Woodland Trust, looking at the sort of needs of ancient woodland and trying to get them in generally a better direction than some of them are going. Yeah, and I'm also a woodland owner, which is I sort of have a similar sort of experience from everyone attending or most attending tonight, I guess, which is grand. Yeah, cut a bit of timber and a bit of farming and things as well. So a varied background, but yeah, that's me.
Right. So tonight we're going to talk about tackling the needs of different woodlands, which is a very big and broad subject. We could go anywhere with this one. So what we're going to do is we'll begin by, I'll have a couple of questions for you guys shortly, so everyone's take part, and then we'll have, then Jamie's going to talk through some of the aspects of the needs of different woodlands, and when you come fresh to them as well, what you might be thinking about or what you might think about for your next steps. And then we're going to cover two case studies. So one is Bill and Hillary's wood. Do you want to give us a wave if you're there? If you are, might not be on my screen. But so Bill and Hillary's wood, and then we'll talk to Duncan and Jan as well about their woodlands. So we have two case studies. After that, we're going to open up for a question and answer, a Q&A. So if you want to have a think about anything you want to ask us, and we'll try and get through a few of them, and we'll do that towards the end after the case studies, after we've looked at all the different aspects. So let's just hang on. There we go. So if everyone could open their chat, you can find chat in the little speech bubble at the bottom usually of the screen. Do you own a woodland and why? So if we put a few things up here as to what you might say for this. Biodiversity, investment, recreation, wood fuel, health. You might be thinking about your health, going out into the woods. It might just be for curiosity, yearning, desperation. If you don't own a woodland, why would you own a woodland? I suppose you can answer that question in here as well. I'm just going to give you a few seconds there. Just see what everyone comes up with.
Not to you or anything?
No, fine.
I think I can see Bill's arrived. Hello, Bill.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's grand.
Good.
So, yeah, most people have found the chat box then, and so we're asking why you might own a woodland, and there's a few choices, but other ideas as well.
Some interesting ones coming up: for retirement, recreation, long-term investment, carbon, all of them, all the reasons. I like that one. Wood fuel, biodiversity and recreation, all inside 5 acres. I like that one. Well-being, diversity, growing your own fuel. I think a few people might agree with that. That's quite a priority now. Mental health, cheaper than therapy. Yeah. Keep going through them all. Legacy, absolutely. Peaceful recreation. I like that. Whoever coined that, I think that's a nice way of putting it. Family, fuel, peace and woodland pleasures, preserving nature, biodiversity. Thank you. I think what you're knocking on here is that everybody has very different reasons as to why they own a woodland or come to woodland, or why they would want to own a woodland. A few people don't, who'll be in this group. And it just goes to show that when you're tackling the needs of woodlands, you have a lot of different things to think about. You might be coming at it from a very different angle. So I've got another question for you. What type of woodland do you own or manage? I think somebody earlier wrote coppice, so this is where we're going. So maybe if you don't have one yet, which one would you like to own or manage? So these are broadleaf, conifer, mixed, ancient woodland or plantations on ancient woodland sites. That's pause, where you've got conifers growing on your site for production, but maybe they shouldn't be there. Production. Have you got a young woodland? Maybe you've just planted one. Coppice, wet woodlands, uplands. In fact, there's lots of different types you might have. Let's have a look. Got a few paws coming through. Plantations on ancient woodland sites. Coppice and standards.
I see the dairy desert, as in ancient woodland within a dairy desert, newly planted on a dairy desert. That's an interesting one.
Yeah. What else have we got?
So there's quite a bit of ancient woodland in here looking at this. I would say almost half. Well, forest garden, that's an exciting one as well.
There's a few mixed planted 20-year-old. I've got a couple here that are 20 years old. Both mixed woodlands. I think that's more likely. Yeah, more recently we've seen a lot more mixed woodlands in the last few decades than you might have done previously. Neglected, semi-ancient planted ex-colliery sites. Interesting. Forest garden and coppice. What else have we got? You seeing any others in there?
Yeah, I can see an 80-year-old woodland.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
someone who knows their woodland. W11, W7, well done.
Oh, nice.
Mixed pioneer woodland. Give you a second.
So there's a broad mix on here. I would think looking at it around half or maybe half, something like that have shown up so far, a sort of ancient or plantation on ancient woodland site. So looking through our list there aren't many that are just coming up as just conifer or production woodlands. There's not many productive woodlands, but then I guess smaller woodland sales tend to be, not necessarily large sort of spruce plantations, for example, although they may well include areas of that. So
there are some paws there. There are some paws. So maybe it's recognised that they've been cut up and sold on, or you bought the woodland because of the ancient woodland area on it, potentially.
So yeah, there's a sort of a broad range, but yeah, it's interesting to see that the number of ancient woodlands, etc., that are in. That's good to see people looking after those.
So I think this is something else. So we've looked at why people appreciate the woodland or what they want from their woodland as an objective. It's a need that you want from the woodland, and then we've got the type of woodland that you may have come to. It may have been given to you. You may have bought that woodland because it's close to home, and it just happened to be a woodland that was for sale but was ready to go. It may be that you've owned this woodland through your family, through generations, and have been looking after it. And within each of those woodland sites, what we're seeing here as well is that we've got a few mixed going on, different things. There's a couple there which were coppice and others, and you start to look at your woodland and you see that there's a lot going on inside it. So when we talk about the needs of different woodlands, we're really thinking about all of those aspects in your woodland. So it could be quite different. So that's why this subject is quite a large one that we're covering. But we're I'm going to hand over to Jamie now. Is going to, let's see. There we go. What happens when you first come to your woodland? Go, Jamie.
Yeah, no, so it's I think one of the initial slides was the sort of craving to sort of own a bit of woodland. There's a real drive among people to go, oh, what grand, we've finally got it, amazing. And then, it can be quite a daunting thing in terms of, yes, even though it's very exciting and it can be a sort of a pleasure, there's also a range of different things to sort of consider. So and particularly given the sort of different sorts of woodland that are around. So yeah, I think understanding that there's the sort of different types of woodland is one of the main sort of starting points, and then there's sort of a bit of a dilemma about how you might manage the woodland or what you do. So I guess one of the first things, obviously, in choosing a site is sort of understanding what's there, and that will be sort of presented in a sales pitch, I guess. And if there's been an agent or something to show you around, then that's a handy thing. And then once you've got the site, you'll have a bit of maybe learning how the woodland is and what's there, and then you maybe have a dilemma of how and when you might start management. So I guess it might be an option to do nothing, but then equally it might be something that, and that's sort of okay for a while for most places, and particularly the ancient woodlands. Nothing is sometimes better than too much, for example. But then if you did start work and you've done too much, then I guess there's sort of a bit of a risk there. So yeah, there's dilemmas of that. I guess it's daunting as well because there's risks. There's also costs and sort of pitfalls in terms of these stumbling blocks along the way. But ultimately, there's always benefits sort of down the line in terms of what you can get from the woodland. So we're going to go through these a bit more one by one. Oh, thanks, Carrie. That's grand. So yeah, dilemmas. Should we fell any trees? And it's I've been to sort of, I guess through work, we've been to dozens, hundreds, I suppose, of woodlands, and quite often we'll go and people will say, we've just bought it for biodiversity, and they never intend ever to get a chainsaw out or cut a tree down, and that's can be okay, but equally it maybe does need some attention in some cases, particularly for plantations and things where they've been sort of set off with an intention to produce timber ultimately. So yeah, that's sort of one of those situations where it needs a bit of consideration. But ultimately, I guess it's all about balance and working out sort of what's there and understanding when to do something. More often than not, sort of any decision in a woodland is sort of subjective in a way, in that one person might think something and another might think another. So it's not often that you can do something actually wrong, really. So that's something to sort of take away in a way. But the more special, I guess, the woodlands are, the more consideration they need. So risks, let's have a look at that. I guess they can be dangerous. So it's the most dangerous industry, for example. So you need to know your limits in terms of what you're capable of. Maybe we should do a question in the chat to see who has a chainsaw license, who uses a saw in the woods, for example. Would people be able to do that as I'm talking through? But
yes, if you do.
So you need to know your limits on what you can achieve yourself, and know when to ask for help. So yeah, I guess that's one of the things. I think it's sensible to ask for assistance when it's needed, obviously. So yeah, and it's quite easy to, if people are using saws, etc., get trees hung up and things like that, particularly if it's something you're not doing all the time. So yeah, just know your limits, and it is a dangerous industry, etc. And you can't put trees back up either. So once they're down, and it can make quite a sort of be a rum decision at times in terms of you go, I wish I hadn't done that, should have done something else. So thinking about the situation is think more than starting the saw sometimes. So yeah, I think we could move on to the next one there, Carrie.
Okay, cool. We've got a few people there who've got chainsaw licenses, and a couple that don't have a license but are careful. I like that. Don't have a license, very careful with any tree that's leaning. It's always good to get advice if you have issues in your woodlands and you have dangerous issues, things like that may be slightly trickier and you don't know what the tree's going to do. I'm just saying that out loud, but yeah, quite a few people there. Either
Yeah,
with or
no,
without.
that's really great to see. There's certainly a number. There is one here that says they use qualified people, so that's great as well. So yeah, I think actually that sort of brings us on to the next bit. It's sort of about costs, and yeah, obviously a woodland is a big investment to start off with, but it's, yeah, don't be afraid to buy in help. It may be that it does cost, but ultimately there are benefits, and you probably gain experience on the way as well. So that's worthwhile knowing. So yeah, I think obviously generally the smaller woodlands, it's about economies of scale, and particularly if you plan to sell timber, it can be quite difficult in small areas. And yeah, I know it's not a primary sort of objective of the group as such, but yeah, it's worth keeping that in mind, that it sort of can cost ultimately, but it's still sometimes the right thing to do. So yeah, should we have a look at the next piece? Pitfalls. Oh, yeah, I think, well, many of us will come across variations of this. So disease, obviously, well, we're up in Cumbria. Phytophthora, for example, has been fairly devastating in some areas, not everywhere. So that's something to be aware of. Ash dieback, I'm sure people have had to deal with that or are aware of it in many cases. So yeah, and I guess there's obviously a risk of other diseases coming and going at times as well. So it's something to be aware of all the time. Yeah, and I guess we've sort of said we're obviously talking about the needs of different woodlands. I think fortunately we went through a list of many sort of different types, and therefore we're lucky to have a mosaic of different woodlands. And the benefit of sort of the woodlands, small woods owners system, is that people are managing in different ways as well. So that's really great in terms of adding diversity. A little bit on storms. Yeah, I guess that can be, well, unpredicted at times and surprising. And a storm will often take the trees that you don't expect it to take, but sometimes they can take the ones that are sort of more exposed as well. So a little bit of that goes to, well, you can get into great detail and great depth of how to thin a woodland to reduce storm damage, species, etc. Just something to be aware of, like longer term. And then, yeah, I guess understanding what your timber stand is, or the species are that make up the woodland, and therefore sort of knowing how best to sort of work that to make it a sort of, well, storm-proof, maybe not, but more resilient at least. Herbivores, quite difficult to fence small areas of woodland, and expensive, because often it's a sort of a small block rather than larger areas. Obviously coops and things work. I guess that sort of ties us into people and joint working, in terms of it's sometimes different objectives is a good thing, and sometimes it makes management harder. So for example, if you have clearings, etc., where you want to woodland to establish, and you need a more joined up approach in terms of herbivore management, etc. So sheep, deer, squirrels, those sorts of things. Yeah, it's fairly straightforward, but actually it is a real risk, and it's very frustrating when you've planted something and it all gets nibbled off, as I'm sure you're aware. So yeah.
While Jamie's talking, if anybody has any of these issues, do put them in the chat, because we're reading through and I'll point a few out in a minute. Go on, Jamie, sorry. People are next.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, like just in terms of people, well, either sort of walking through or sort of antisocial behaviour, etc. It can be, well, I was going to say leaving a gate open, maybe less so in some woodlands, but certainly in others it can be an issue. Yeah, and I think I've sort of alluded to it with the herbivores, the joint working. It can work, and it can work well, but equally sort of different opinions can make it not happen at all. So it can be quite hard to get things going on a larger scale at times. But yeah, something to try and work with.
We're getting a lot about deer pointed out in the comments, and
oh dear.
dear, oh dear.
Well,
And
I think that ties in well with the webinar down the line then, doesn't it, Sarah? If that should hopefully be useful.
Yeah, get yourselves signed up for February, guys.
Yeah.
yes, there's a few there with deer and storm damage. I think, you know, if you've got things like disease in there and a storm comes along, it just it adds on to what is already maybe a poorly situation for you. So but it is just thinking about your woodland in that whole and seeing everything that's in there and understanding, you know, what the pressures are on it. You can move forward. So
I've just noticed 2 items in the chat. One was Arwen coppiced 5 of our big hazels, and another is windblow of 2 acres or 2 odd acres of a woodland. But now it means that the wood can be diversified. So actually there are opportunities as well from things happening. And yeah. I completely agree with that. I've been to some woodlands where Arwen has done a tremendous job of thinning, and one that wouldn't necessarily have happened otherwise. So, and yes, it's daunting, but it actually can be a really useful thing at times. But yeah, on some levels. So yeah, but I guess we've had some slightly negative chat, but now it's back to the benefits of it, because ultimately people sort of buy and use and work in woodlands because it's beneficial, it's fun, and again that goes back to the reasons of why we're there in the first place. So yeah, we'll look back at the outcomes list, and well, yeah, again, for example, the storms can create biodiversity. The investment side, yeah, in time things will probably improve, and if we're working the woods, or even if we're not, it's probably something that will accrue value. Recreation, it's still I'm sure a lot of people will go because it's a very nice place to be, and that goes back to health, etc. as well. That's just further down. Wood fuel, good to see in the chat earlier. There's a lot of the group here are obviously using the wood fuel, which is excellent, and that's sort of the benefit long term. And yeah, but I guess the bottom of curiosity, desperation, yearning, etc. Once we're there, it'll be fulfilling. So it's yeah, it's sort of a nice sort of thing to have and benefit from, really. So yeah.
Absolutely. I'm just reading the comments. We've got something here from an Asian bark beetle in Kent. They felled underground for 1 hectare, and the spruce has now become infected before collected. So there are some unfortunate events that can happen, and it's just sometimes you don't know that these things are going to happen, unfortunately. But yeah, this absolutely, the benefits of owning the woodland itself as a whole and having all these other things. So if you're working towards your goals and your objectives, you maybe need a plan, and we'll look at that in a minute with the case studies, but it maybe have that plan ahead of you. Sometimes you get these issues, but yeah, you can make that work for you, and it can be part of your bigger plan. You might have already thought about them, what happens if, that kind of thing. So I think, Jamie, you wanted to introduce.
Yeah, well, so Bill King and Hilary King owners. So we've got two case studies. They're actually both ancient woodlands. They're both in Cumbria, and yeah, they're both sort of good examples of where the owner's doing very good management. So, and I think first of all we'll do Dakerwood, which is Bill and Hilary King. So should we say hello, Bill? I can see Bill, but he's maybe just asked to unmute. I think that's the thing we need to do.
Okay. As co-host, Jamie, could you unmute him if you can see him?
I could, and now he's gone off the screen, so I'll just have a quick look. He's on a different telephone and not Bill's phone, so I'll see if I can find him again.
Thanks. Well, we're just waiting while we've got a little gap.
Is that better?
Yeah, we're there.
Ah, right, sorry.
You done? You mark it on the map or whatever?
Technical hitch. No, it's okay. I think I'm
no, we can see you, Bill. That's grand.
Right. Okay. Yes, I've got a background in forestry, and my wife and I just fancied getting ourselves a little piece of woodland, and we bought Dacre Wood in 2013. We took possession in April 2013, and management plans aside, the first thing we had to do, I had to deal with 7 windblown spruce along the stream side, which was a sort of a baptism of fire. I used to be a chainsaw instructor, so I've got all the training and experience in all the areas of chainsaw work. We have since got, we don't have a management plan as such. Our plan is in my head, and it is flexible, shall we say. We can cope with all eventualities. Our long-term goal is to get as much oak replanted through the wood. It's a pause, it's an ancient woodland site. There are the remnants of some very mature oak trees on the site, and we've been digging up the progeny that we find. We find little oaks growing all over the place, possibly thanks to jays. Jays are apparently very good at spreading acorns and getting little oaks growing in strange places. We've created 2 small nursery areas, one of which we've used Western red cedar as a nurse for the oaks, which seems to be working fairly successfully. Jamie may have photographs of this, I'm not sure. But,
yeah, later on.
Okay, right. That's working quite nicely. One area doesn't have nurse species, but they're really, basically it was an attempt to protect the oaks that were growing on site. Otherwise, the deer would clear them. I was out at the wood today, and there was a dead roe deer at the side of the road. This is a fairly common occurrence. The usual procedure is to hoy it over the fence into the wood, so that any whatever comes to feed off it is in the wood rather than on the roadside, liable to add to the roadkill that are already there. We have the grey squirrels are present. They are controlled by 4 out of the, there are 5 blocks. We are 3 acres of the Helbeck wood. There are 4 other owners, one of whom is very much against grey squirrels being controlled. So they're controlled everywhere else. The chap who does it hasn't seen any for some time, but he has seen 2 reds. We do have red squirrels. There used to be more, then they seem to disappear. We're now back to 2 definite, without any grey sightings.
I'm going to interrupt Bill for a second, if it's all right.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, so just I think the woodland as a whole is primarily larch with a bit of pine, isn't it? So I think you have some of the more diverse broadleaf species, and actually this map shows it quite well on the edge, and certainly on the edge towards the golf course as well, beech trees, etc.
That's right.
Yeah, if we can move on to a photograph, Carrie, perhaps, and then we could see. There's our seedlings. Look.
There we go. There are 2 of the one on the right was planted quite recently. The one on the left, in terms of weed control, I hand weed round them every now and then just to keep the vegetation out of the way. And you can see the Western red cedar in the background. We're going to have to make a decision as to what we do with them fairly soon, because you can see they're drawing the oak up quite nicely, but in some areas they are quite thick, and we might need to think about either digging them up and planting them in the wood somewhere, or maybe just cutting them to waste. We haven't decided yet, but it'd be a shame to lose them, because some of them are quite nicely grown. When they were initially planted, a lot of them looked dead quite quickly, but they have since recovered. I won't mention the name of the nursery, but they've since recovered and done, as you can see, quite nicely. We've got about 80 or 90 in that block where the photographs are, and about another 30 or 40 on the other side of the track in the other fenced off nursery.
Fantastic. If I just click on, I'll show you the bigger photos. Someone can't see the photo, Sarah. They're saying in the chat, but I'm not too sure why. I think you can see it, can you?
Yeah, I can see them okay. So maybe it's a.
Perhaps you need to select the grid so you can see all the thumbnails. Oh, okay.
Should we try another slide?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, let's move on. So we've got a couple of slides that just show the woodland as a whole, and a lovely picture of Jamie there, I notice, as well with you.
Yeah. So this
That's
shows
me in the middle, not the right.
Recording in progress.
I'm not.
Not me.
That was great. That was
No, I
wonderful.
don't know what that
Wasn't
was.
me.
Right, we're back again though.
Carry on, Jamie. You were going to
yeah,
talk
this-
about.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say we helped Bill do a little bit of work with I think it was green recovery funding. So this photo shows well the extent of the larch. It's really good drawn up timber, and there's quite sort of a lot of it throughout. And we sort of helped start a little bit of thinning in the woodland. And yeah, this was I think 2021 from memory. So this shows us we went around the site, selected a few trees. We did try a horse logger, which wasn't so successful, but then also we used a mini forwarder as well to extract the timber. So
There you go.
have a look at that.
There we go.
That's a brilliant picture, that is, isn't it?
It was a brilliant job, apart from the horse loggers, we didn't get to experience their horse logging. We experienced their felling, which was deplorable. So that somebody else finished the felling, and this chap, David Cameron, with his ulster, he came in, and he is an excellent guy to work with. He was absolutely brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so this is, I could also make the point here, our boundary, we neighbour with the golf course, Brampton Golf Course, with whom we have a very, very good working relationship. They asked if they could fell, we have our beach boundary trees overhang their golf course. Could they take some branches off? We agreed, provided that, any damage to the fence was repaired. In the meantime, the storm brought down a few more. I was up there today just to see what they'd done, and the brash is they've stacked all the brash over our side. They've stacked the produce separately in nice, neat little stacks, and there are a few bigger bits still to come, which I just confirmed that will come over to us at some point. The minor damage to the fence will be repaired as and when they have time, because they've had a lot of work to do. But I think getting on with your neighbours is paramount. As far as Dacrewood goes, our immediate neighbour, Chuck called Les Wells, lives locally. He's out there quite frequently. We see him quite regularly. The other owners very rarely see, if at all. So Les is the one that we deal with most, and let's say we are singing from the same hymn sheet, and we get on well.
That's brilliant,
grand.
and that's lucky as well. Sometimes I think there's been a lot of cases where that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
particularly where people have bought smaller lots and you are neighboured maybe on many sides as well. In some of these areas, and it can be quite tricky to get hold of people sometimes, let alone have these conversations. So I think you've done a good job there.
Yeah.
Well,
this was, as you probably gathered, it's a Woodlands UK job where they bought the wood, split it down, spent as little as possible on the roads and the tracking, so that my nightmare is if we ever had to do a timber operation, because the roads won't take it. There's a bridge which certainly wouldn't take forward a traffic, and it could only be done on a little and often basis, which is not. And we have 4 other owners sharing this, and I mean, for touch wood, there's a lot of larch in the wood. We've avoided Phytophthora so far. If we suddenly had to do a mass felling, it would be a bit of a nightmare, and it'd be an interesting project to see how it could be done. And I'm kind of open to suggestions.
That little and often approach is sort of a handy thing, though. So if we go to the next slide, I think it shows the ulster on the track, and that's something to see.
Oh, sorry, yeah, we looked at the costs here.
Oh yeah. So that shows the ulster. That's the access track at the bottom. So yeah, just cost of it as an idea: £200 a day maybe for a chainsaw operator, probably 250 realistically at times. A machine like the ulster, that's roughly 500 a day. You can move within a day on a short haul, maybe up to 20 tons, something like that, for of timber, so it can do quite a lot. It's reasonable. And then if you were to use a forester to do applications or different aspects of the operations management, etc., you'd be paying something like £60 an hour. So there are costs, but ultimately, well, yeah, I think Bill just alluded to the fact that that particular woodland, you can see straight ahead above the Alster here, it's very drawn, larch, and there's lots of it. But see, so at some point more would need to be done, and otherwise it'll end up possibly as a clear fell down the line without sort of ongoing intervention. So you're ahead of the game, Bill. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Should we carry on?
Not often
Yeah.
you say that.
I'd just like to point out that 3 people have said they've got WhatsApp groups. Well, slight variations on how well that's working, but they have WhatsApp groups which they have all the owners on, so they have been put in contact with different people, which is great. It's really good to hear.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So Bill, thank you very much. I think we're going to move on to Duncan and Jan. Is Duncan here?
Yeah, that's
I see
timing.
you.
Yes, yeah.
I see you.
And John's here too, yeah.
I think Jamie wanted to say something at the beginning. Jamie, did you want to talk about
Yeah,
this?
I'll do that. I feel really cheeky writing "sat on the hands" because when I first went to Duncan and Jan, they were very fresh woodland owners, and we walked around and had a really good chat. And Duncan said, "Oh, we're just going to learn about it for a year before we do anything." And I think that actually is the most valuable part of my sort of knowing Duncan and Jan, is the sitting and thinking about it rather than rushing in and firing on with things. So it was a really sort of good start to things. So yeah, and then you've asked for help and advice from lots of different places, and now you've run with it. So yeah, really, that's my introduction. But if you want to have a talk through yourself as well, Duncan and Jan, that would be grand. So we have got our slides. I think it's your management plan that you'd sent through in 2018. And so I guess in contrast in a way to Bill's wood, Duncan and Jan have written things and drawn maps and sort of gone into quite a bit of detail on paper as well as in the wood. Whereas Bill's plan is more in his head and a bit more adaptive, but it's 2 very good but slightly different approaches to management. So yeah, hello Duncan.
Hello Jamie, thanks very much. Thanks for inviting us. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Good. I think the main thing is to have very clear objectives that you just keep referring back to. Our objectives are mainly biodiversity and enjoying the wood with our family, and doing some production, because I think if a wood's not productive, it probably doesn't last. And that's more or less it. We got the wood in 2017. It's a very diverse broadleaf wood with 2 spruce, 1 Sitka and 1 Norway stands, small stands. As Jamie says, we got a lot of advice, and probably the most valuable thing for us about the wood is the people we've met, like Jamie, like Gareth Browning, Peter Fox, people who have given us advice so openly, and that's really great. I'd suggest to anybody that if they want to start modifying a wood, after they've thought about it and maybe written a plan, they maybe start monitoring what they've got before they start changing things. And one easy thing for us in Cumbria was to get the 3 BSBI, Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland, county recorders round the wood, and in a morning they more or less spotted all the vascular plants that were there, and that's a baseline that we can use now for anything that we do to measure the changes. The other thing I think is we did the Cumbria Woodlands course, the online course recently, and what I got from that especially was the value of taking a gradual approach, so you don't stress the woodland by instantly felling around these ancient oak trees and exposing them to too much light. So go gradual. That's good for us because we're in our 70s, so so we can't really do that much very quickly. So comforting. The other thing I would like to say is we've got to go in and we've cleared some spruce around the oaks, but it's occurred to us that some things are missing in our approach. One is planting small trees at woodland edges. And I think for the point of view of getting wildlife going, small trees around woodland edges are important, and maybe periodic cutting of these to represent a coppice approach would also contribute. Then the second thing, because I don't want to take a long time, but the second thing is that there's a lot of information out there that says you should look at the landscape, look at your woodland in the landscape. Don't just go in through the gate and think, right, what we're going to do in here. Look at the bird's eye view of the landscape and where your wood is in relation to that. But there's very little practical advice out there about what that means. You know, so there's mobile species like herbivores, deer, squirrel. There's birds, bats, bees, rivers. There's all sorts of dimensions to the landscape that could affect the way you manage the wood if you manage it for conservation of biodiversity. But it's really, I think there's a bit of a hole out there in terms of getting advice, who to contact, how to contact people, what sort of considerations, basic principles of landscape management. That's just one separate thing. We found in terms of making a plan that the My Forest, the Silva My Forest resources are pretty good. So just Google My Forest and it will come up. And for a small fee, you can get a mapping. It's really good. So I don't want to take up too much time, but they're some of the things that we can think about, Jan. Yeah.
That's great. And Duncan, while you were talking, Duncan, I've been clicking through your management plan and I noticed something. And I'm just going to go back, and it's this J compartment in the top left. I don't know if everyone's seen this, where the opportunities of fun are highlighted. And as you go through and you're looking at where you've said you're going to put your wildlife corridors in, where you're going to expand your oak woods, and then you've got this one axis of fun that runs right through that. Do you want to explain that for me just for a moment, for everybody here?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So we can camp in the wood. There's a campsite there as well on the screen, and we've got a small family with 2 grandsons and a son-in-law, all like mountain biking. So there's a possibility of zooming down that axis and mountain bikes and crashing into the water at the bottom, and that probably is fun, I guess.
Brilliant. And I'm just clicking through these so people can see the kind of detail you've managed to go into. And we've hit the first phase felling, 2017 to 2021, where you've really written out what you're going to do to meet those objectives that you've looked at and working with your area. And the restocking phase also with that. So if anyone's never gone through this kind of woodland management plan staged idea, this is a really good way of getting your ideas in order and coming out with those objectives that you originally wanted. So we've got in here biodiversity objectives, we've got in here fun objectives, we've got in here different things that I wanted as an outcome, and now we're seeing that you're able to make that happen, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. And there's quite a few pages here, so I'm just going to go through to this here. I think
I'm going to just interrupt as well on Duncan and Jan's wood as well. So you have had a felling license in the past. So I guess this is something to talk about in terms of a management plan would come normally with a felling license attached to it. And yet, I think actually neither of the woodlands currently have an active felling license, but there's still management going on, and it's sort of okay. And as long as you have a chat with the woodland officer and say, we are going to fell some trees, but do it within the legal calendar quarter allowances, then it's okay. And I think actually, Duncan, you and I had a chat yesterday, and we were saying, well, it's within you're within the sort of the legal allowances, and it's sort of marginal maybe sometimes in terms of your decision to then go and get another felling license, for example. But it's possible to sort of schedule your work to make it fit. And yeah, I think one of those things is to sort of take away that you don't have to have a plan necessarily, but if you do, it sort of can schedule your work to sort of make that fit. So the key thing is to obviously be the right side of the law and talk to your woodland officer. So yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you for that. So, Jamie, do you want to pull out any highlights that you had from helping?
Yeah, so I guess actually that management plan / felling license part was one of those in a way, in terms of, yeah, both these woods don't have, Duncan and John, I think your license has expired, but you've had a management plan and a license in the past. And Bill, we did this work under license as such when we did the felling there. But yeah, it's that you can still manage a wood that way. Obviously, some woods need more. I think if you were to take more out of your wood, Bill, for example, then of course it would need a license down the line, and that's something that you need to go through. But yeah, it really is just to sort of say that. So I was going to ask both Bill and Hilary and Duncan and Jan whether you had sort of 2 points each about what you've sort of learned and what you've sort of enjoyed from the woodlands. So should we go Bill first? Yeah. I can't hear you, Bill. I'll just turn you on. There we go.
No, that didn't work. Try again. Oh, Bill, you're muted. Shall we go to Duncan then?
There we are. Now we've got Bill.
Oh, hang on, we've got Bill.
Oh, two things. It should be fun. Whatever you're doing there should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be oh God, we have to go to the wood again and do do something that we're not particularly happy about doing. We've had great fun with ours. We've rather than going for felling license, we fell odd trees, which is obviously going to be within the 5 cube remit. We've had a lovely family get together last year. My mum was in the Women's Timber Corps in the last Second World War, died recently, and we had half her ashes scattered in the wood around a little oak tree that she found growing, and we transplanted with her name on it. We had a bonfire party out there last week. It's just a great place to have fun with other people.
That's grand.
That's the main point I'd like to make really with it, is that having worked in woods for a lot of my working life, it's now nice to go into one and just to be able to relax and enjoy it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Bill. Duncan and Jan?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with everything Bill said. The other thing I did say, the people that we've met who've helped us, the people like yourself, Jamie, and Gareth Browning and so on, just meeting these people and enjoying their company, benefiting from their advice, great. Yeah, I think that's probably all I need to say. Yeah.
No, that's really grand. I think, well, yeah, the meeting people side of thing is, yeah, I agree. It's always a real pleasure to go out and meet people and just get a bit of enthusiasm and yeah, set people the right way. It's a really great thing to do and see people flourish. So yeah, thank you. That's good to hear and good to see you're on the way, sort of thing. Yes.
Could I make another point?
Yeah, go on, Bill.
I've got a small logger sawmill for sale or to give away. Basically, it's a girder. It's 2 brackets which bolt to either end of the log, and with a support and a bracket goes onto the chainsaw. We bought it, used it briefly, and I moved on to better things. And if anybody's interested, they can contact me through Cumbria Woodlands, and I'm sure we can do a very beneficial deal for somebody. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, should we do questions and answers then.
So yeah, we've got 10 minutes left. If you want to put any burning questions you have, we'll pick a couple from the chat. And while you're doing that, there was a question that came up earlier, so I'm going to ask that question. And the question is to Bill and Hilary. Was the income generated? Did you generate any income from the work that you did, and did you break even?
Oh, we will never ever break even on it. The trees that were marked and felled for us, the larch that Jamie's was involved in, we did manage to sell some of that. But if you look at the horrendous price we paid for the wood, we will never ever break even. But that isn't the point. I also got rather annoyed when somebody asked me if, or somebody commented, "Oh, that was a good investment." Now, there was no thought of investment at all when we bought the wood. There was no. It was, I think, horrendously overpriced. But we have a stream, we have access, we have a lot. It ticks a lot of boxes, and so we're happy in that respect. But we don't expect to ever break even on it. Not in my wildest fantasies will we ever break even on it. But that is, as we say, that is not the point. A bit of money back every now and then is nice, but if we were to work out the amount of firewood that we've taken home, if we'd had to pay for that, then that goes a little way towards it. But no, money's not. We're not financially motivated in that sense.
No, Ali and Caroline had a follow-up on that. Not necessarily break even on wood value, just the forestry operation. Did you manage to pay for the forestry operation and what you did?
I think we supported the forestry operation in Bill's wood in that case. So yes. I would say that did not wash its face in that case. So, but I guess I reckon it could do with a more regular or a higher volume thinning or felling. So yeah.
It would economies of scale if we were going to fell a larger volume, especially if I did the felling, which I'd be capable of doing. Got David with his Ulster in to heap it together, sold it to Dougie Ivinson. It's doable. I'd need to sit down and do the costings on it, but it would be possible. You could probably do a bit more than break even, but break even, break your back, I'm not sure which is worse. It would be a lot of work.
So we had another question about going rate for leasing a woodland, and I think there are people possibly answering that in the chat. So if you have an answer for that, do put that in the chat, because otherwise I'll be opening that up for anybody else, I think, here. It could be different depending where you are. Can I promote woodland fungi? Yes, Ben, you can always promote woodland fungi. But unless you want to give a quick shout out to anything right now, I'm going to move on to another question.
Hi, Carrie, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, sorry. The only shout out, thanks very much for giving me a second. Without fungi, you wouldn't have a woodland. So what you will find, for people that don't know, is that for each county, you will have a fungal study group or a fungal research group, and each county in the UK will have a fungi recorder as well. So do feel free to get in contact with those people, invite them to have a look in your woodland, come and survey the fungi that you have. We did it recently in ours. We've got just on a single day, over 65 species of fungi recorded just on 5 acres of woodland in Norfolk. 30 species of moth. You have, honestly, until you actually ask the experts, you have no idea of the biodiversity you have in your woodland. And if you have no idea of the biodiversity, you have no idea how to look after it.
And they don't charge. Brilliant. That was brilliant. Thank you, Ben. And I think it'd be really good if you could put in the chat who people should contact. That'd be really great. And if anybody else knows of any, just pop them in the chat so everyone can see. But like I think it was Duncan and Jan, they approached the Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland for their Vice County recorders. You've all got them in your area, and they know your areas very well. They know your flora very well. So that's another one that you can contact. There's also the British Lichen Society. There's all sorts. It's well worth asking around. It's huge. So spiral guards. We have spiral tree guards on the hedgerow we've planted around the edge of our wood. So I think this question is going to go for Jamie. to protect our saplings from deer. I have a suspicion that these inhibit growth. Does anyone have any suggestions about alternative approaches? So firstly, do they inhibit growth? And are there any alternative approaches? Nice
Is
and
that-
snappy, we haven't got long.
hedge spirals, is it?
Yeah, spiral tree guards on their hedgerow.
Yeah, I think it might be a species thing in that beech will fill its leaves, and there's only so far those leaves can go. But ultimately, once it gets up and away and past the rabbit, it's going to have a chance. So it's more about letting it do that first thing. So yeah, and some of it can be grass competition. Obviously, if there's no, if you're not weeding or such like, then yeah, it's going to struggle a bit more. But really, it's a solution to stop things eating it in the first couple of years, and then they'll get up and away. So I think it's, yeah, they're needed for a reason. So
I don't think it necessarily inhibits growth. The reason you use the spiral guards instead of a tube for your hedgerow is so it can move outwards more. However, that doesn't necessarily stop deer eating down from the top. So you may need other measures in there if you have heavy deer presence, I think. Just looking at the question there. I see a lot of people have spruce plantations. I'm just starting to thin mine out in the beech woodlands, but I don't know what to then use the spruce for. Is there any economic value in about 15 trees? That's a good question because we get that a lot. Doesn't look to be a good one to sell as firewood. Go on, Jamie.
Well, I'm thinking not maybe a good one to sell as firewood, but someone somewhere will want it. I think it's an economies of scale thing in terms of if there's a wagon load, someone will buy it, and that's that really. Whereas if there's not, it's going to be harder to shift. So yeah, trying to find a local market, great. Beyond that, as soon as you can group it together maybe with others to make a wagon, that might be an answer. But yeah, really, if you want proper money for it, you need to have wagon loads of wood.
And I think there's a sister question here, which I might answer, but it's the sites where extraction is difficult / impossible. If a tree is coming down, does it necessarily come out? What other things are good practice?
Well, I've just spied Ben Davis has just put in the chat again. Please leave deadwood. Exactly. So 15 trees, 15 trees in 2 acres of woodland or 5 acres of woodland. Aye, leave it there. No worries.
You want about 40 cubic meter of deadwood in every hectare, which is a lot. If we're to meet
two wagon loads of wood, if not more. I think. Yeah. Well, yeah. So it's if you can imagine that there's. And we've got a firewood hungry or a wood fuel hungry group here, so people be quite quick to tidy things up that are on the floor potentially. But actually, yeah, if you're thinking 2 wagon loads of wood of timber strewn around a hectare of land, it is a lot of wood, and that's what the wood needs. It needs deadwood. So good prompt.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, not everyone's going to be able to get that much deadwood in one area. A storm does that for you. And then maybe your neighbouring area is more managed, and you've got a balance going on. So it's a lot of wood if you really think about how much you should be having to keep that biodiversity healthy in your woodlands. I'm
looking at the clock. So do we have one more question?
I'm not sure we have another question. I'm just running through. There used to be a website called Woodlots. That would be an introduction to landowners. And people who wish to. So there's a lot of information in this chat that it might be worth people just have a look through. I'm not seeing another question there, which is really, and we are sort of reaching the end of where we are coming to. I'm going to pop in the chat here, just where we are. So if you're in Cumbria Woodlands, if you're in Cumbria, sorry, we have a woodland advisory service that we might be able to help you with, or if you're just neighbouring Cumbria. But we also have online and in-person training, and that online training is what we were talking about earlier. The ancient woodland stuff is free at the moment. So if you go on a website or if you email info@cumbriawoodlands.co.uk, we can put you in touch with that. So that's absolutely free. That's just for you to access and use as you want to. I think we need to wrap that up, don't we, Jamie? Is there anything else, Jamie, you want to say? Last word? Or Sarah?
I'll just say thank you to everyone. It's been, yeah, I've enjoyed it. Hopefully it's been helpful. There's a good variety here of different owners and different things to think about. So yeah, great.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to Cumbria Woodlands. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Carrie. And thank you to the case studies from Bill, Hilary, Duncan and Jan. I'll get this session uploaded to YouTube by the end of the week. And, you know, on the Cumbria Woodlands website, you've got your training section. I'll link that in the URL so people can have a good old nosy and see what else you can offer. So thank you so much. And thanks to everybody, all the attendees, for all the ideas of future webinars. This is a to and fro sort of thing, and so we're always willing to take your ideas on board, so thank you.
Great, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Take care,
Duncan, Jan.
everybody.
Thank you, Bill and Hilary.
Cheerio, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers, bye-bye.